Well, I'm not completely double jointed, but my arms do this thing.
Oh, get a wide... that's bending down too much, no! Oh my God.
They just sort of go like that.
Cher had given me, for Christmas, she gave me a fur-lined jacket.
Buffalo 66, with its raw, naive quality, what critics call its flat, lo-fi feel. It's been called the best independent film of the last decade.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
What?
Don't touch me.
In the winter of 1998, a 17-year-old girl walked into a bowling alley in Buffalo, New York, wearing powder blue tights, silver-tap shoes, and glitter on her eyelids, the color of a swimming pool. Her character had just been kidnapped. Her director, Vincent Gallo, said that she was, and I quote, basically a puppet. Roger Ebert reviewed her that same summer and said she was dressed like Barbie as a hooker. Todd McCarthy at Variety called her a Cupid doll bimbo. And yet, 28 years later, Layla Lozano is one of the most screenshotted female characters in American indie film. Her single pastel outfit stitched into the DNA of everything we currently call coquette, dolette, or just, online, that Buffalo 66 vibe. If you only have 30 seconds, here's the bottom line of this video. Christina Ricci, at 17 years old, stole a whole movie from its bitter leading man by refusing to raise her voice. She only wore one outfit. She painted her eyelids the loudest shade of blue in American cinema since Isabella Rossellini in Blue Velvet. She sat still in a stolen car, driven by a furious stranger, and that stillness rewired how a generation of women thought about softness, stillness, and femininity. That's the trick. That's the whole thing. But if you'd like the long version, Vincent Gallo's feud, the reversal film stuck, the Gucci Westman eyeshadow, the Capricorn moon, the Pizza Day diet, follow me. Welcome. I'm Kira, and this is your beauty blueprint. I've spent a full week this time watching, reading, rewatching, and slowly picking apart everything Christina Ricci circa 1998, just to bring you the essence of the look that launched 1,000 Tumblr posts. It's one of the most pinned, least understood performances of the 1990s. Layla is a very odd character when you actually sit with her. She barely speaks. She has no backstory, no last name, really, no family, no friends, no past. She is just a kidnapping victim. But she is also, somehow, one of the tenderest figures ever filmed in American cinema. How do those two things sit inside the same 17-year-old girl in powder blue tights? That is exactly what this video is about. We're going to talk about how a pale brunette from New Jersey, 5 feet and 1 inch tall, with a forehead she hated, became the face of indie cinema for a generation of women who were barely born when the film came out. We'll dissect the eyeshadow down to the single discontinued Maybelline pot that's still holding TikTok in a chokehold. We'll talk about why the director didn't want her mother on set.
My mother didn't like me, and she's cold, she's mean, so I can say it and who cares, okay? I'm not complaining.
And yes, quick housekeeping. I designed a Layla-inspired t-shirt specifically for this video's launch. Powder blue, obviously. Tap shoes not included. Link in the description if you feel like wearing the blueprint on your day off. And stick around, because by the end of this video, I'll service up a very practical breakdown of what we can actually learn, practically speaking, from Layla, including the exact products. So settle in, pour yourself a mug of hot chocolate, because hot chocolate, friends, is the only correct pairing for this film. If you stay till the end, I will tell you exactly why. And why don't we start things off with a tiny backstory? Christina Ricci was born February 12, 1980, in Santa Monica, California. Aquarius Sun, Capricorn Moon, Venus in Aries, a truly dense Virgo stellium, with Mars conjunct Jupiter and Saturn hanging out nearby. Aquarius Sun, square Uranus, eccentric, detached. The girl who will always dress a little to one side of whatever trend is happening. The one who says something genuinely shocking in an interview and then seems puzzled that everyone is shocked. Capricorn Moon, the deadpan stillness critics kept circling back to. The mask-like refusal to over-emote. And the Virgo stellium, quiet, body-vigilant perfectionism, which coexisted later with teenage eating patterns she has spoken about publicly. Her father, Ralph Ricci, was a primal scream therapist who ran group sessions in the basement of the family home. Christina has called him, and this is a direct quote, a failed cult leader. She hasn't spoken to him since her parents' divorce in 1993, the year Addams family wrapped. Her mother, Sarah Murdoch, was a 1960s Ford agency model who became a real estate agent. Christina is the youngest of 4, raised in Montclair, New Jersey. At 8 years old, a critic from the Bergen Record saw her in a school production of The 12 Days of Christmas, and essentially changed her life. In her own telling, and I love this half-joke, she had to sort of bully the original child actor into hitting her, so that he'd be punished and she'd get the role. "I've always been a really ambitious person," she told an interviewer later. "I guess that's the first time it really reared its ugly head." An Aquarius confessing to a Virgo crime. And from there, she played Mermaids at 10 as Cher's daughter. Wednesday Addams at 11. Casper, her first lead, at 14. And then the pivot. Ang Lee's The Ice Storm at 17, the role Natalie Portman's parents had turned down on her behalf. Rolling Stone called Ricci's performance the film's crowning glory. It was the last time anyone tried to describe her as a child. In the 18 months that followed, Christina Ricci became a wholly different category of famous. Buffalo 66 premiered at Sundance in January 1998, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, opposite Johnny Depp in May, then The Opposite of Sex, and a Golden Globe nomination that same May. Packer with John Waters in September. Mauveline, Spin, Rolling Stone, Premiere, Interview, The Face, Paper. Terry Richardson shot her for Spin's 1998 cover, under the tagline, "I swear this is verbatim, Hollywood's freakiest girl." Alan von Unwerth shot her for Interview as, and I quote the magazine, "the last cover girl of the century." She was 5'1", she was pale, morbid, literate, sarcastic, and refused to do nudity. She had a grown-up yet childlike face on a tiny yet voluptuous body, which is maybe why photographers couldn't stop asking her to model for them. She looked like a woman and a small child had fused in a laboratory accident. But that wasn't all, obviously, or else we wouldn't be here. John Waters, profiling her in Premiere, said, and again this is direct, "She's going to last forever and ever. She's an original, the real thing. She'll be the big star of a lot of strange movies." Ang Lee, same piece. "We have a saying that the face is not just a face, but a reflection of the mind. Christina may or may not know it, but that is her power." Hold on to that sentence about faces and minds. It's going to come back when we get to Layla. Quick favor before we get to the film itself. If you are even mildly enjoying the vibe so far, please press like. It genuinely helps this kind of video win with the algorithm. And if you haven't subscribed, what are you doing with your one beautiful life? And to our current members and Patreons, I see you, I love you, I genuinely could not make this channel without you. If you'd like to support this channel and my work, I just do all this alone, by the way. I'd be forever grateful if you became a channel member or Patreon. You will also get the extra episodes as a thank you. The next member-only episode will be about Christian F. Have you seen this cult film? It was heavily supported by David Bowie, did you know that? I also, of course, made an episode about him. Here's a link to it. Okay now, Buffalo 66. Vincent Gallo wrote it, directed it, scored it, starred in it, and funded it on roughly $1.5 million. It premiered at Sundance on January 21st, 1998. It's the story of Billy Brown, a man released from a 5-year prison stretch in Gowanda Correctional Facility. A prison stretch he only had to take because he owed a bookie $10,000 from a bet he lost on Super Bowl. Bills vs. Giants in January 1991, the game Scott Norwood famously missed. Billy walks out of prison into the Buffalo cold with no ride, no money, no plan, and certainly no functional bladder. He stumbles into a tap dance studio to use the bathroom, abducts a 17-year-old student in powder blue tights, and orders her to pose as his wife, whom he decides to rename on the spot Wendy Balsam, for a single dinner with his impossible parents. The mother is obsessed with the Buffalo Bills. The father is cold and vicious. After dinner, Billy plans to drive to a strip club and assassinate the kicker whose missed field goal ruined his life. That's it. That's the movie. It is also, obviously in a twisted way, a love story. Gallo shot it on 35mm reversal film stock. That's positive film, originally designed for newsreel photography, which you can project without making a negative first. It is a technical nightmare. You can't meaningfully color correct it in post. It's extremely difficult to light. It's almost never used for feature films because you can't easily strike multiple prints from it. Gallo fired his original cinematographer for objecting to the plan.
I shot Buffalo 66 4 days with no cinematographer because my cinematographer was pre-booked on a homoerotic commercial with that Bruce Weber.
Jeez. I happen to know you are
gay.
No, not gay. Gay and left wing.
I'm gay. And I have rights, okay?
The replacement was Lance Accord, making his feature debut, and the result is one of the most uniquely styled-looking films of the decade. Washed pastels, inky blacks, saturated reds, deep blues, the color palette of a 1960s broadcast. BAFTA later wrote that reversal stock was unpredictable and unstable, two things which absolutely relate to Gallo's character Billy Brown. That's poetry. The Brown family house in the film is Vincent Gallo's actual childhood home in Buffalo. Mickey Rourke was reportedly paid $100,000 cash in a brown paper bag for his single scene as the bookie. Kevin Corrigan actually took his name off the credits. Anjelica Huston plays the mother, by the way. She has only one grievance in life, that her son was born on the one day she missed a Bills game, because her son was born in 1966, the year of the team's last American Football League championship, hence the title. Now, Ricci, she was 17 during production. It was her first film, without her mother on set. She has said, and this is a direct quote from HuffPost in 2015, "I spent most of that movie trapped in a car with a raving lunatic." Gallo, for his part, kept changing moods about her. In one interview, he called her an inspired choice. In another, a notorious Page 6 item reprinted October 2000, he called her, and I am cleaning this up for YouTube, basically a puppet. He said she was drunk on set. He said he made her lose 17 pounds by feeding her one whole pizza pie every day. Ricci has denied the drinking in every subsequent interview and said, about the weight comments, "He waited 3 or 4 years and then decided to make fun of my weight at the time that we were shooting Buffalo 66. He waited that long to make fun of a 17-year-old. She has, frankly, been more charitable to him than I would have been, although I do love him." And here's something she said that I can't stop thinking about. "I've worked with tons of people who have all kinds of different behavior, and you really have to look, at the end of the day, at what did I create? What was I a part of? And I think that's what's going to last and be really important." Well, what she made lasted. In a certain reading of Western art, there is a permanent war between the Apollonian, the still, the sculptural, the painted surface, and the Dionysian, the bodily, the chaotic, the rageful. Buffalo 66 is that war on film. Gallo's direction is Apollonian, frontal, painterly compositions, characters staring straight into the lens, a tap dance solo lit from above in a bowling alley, in a dream. Billy Brown's personal interior, by contrast, is pure Dionysian chaos. Rage, humiliation, a murder-suicide fantasy he can't stop thinking about. Layla is the Apollonian figure inside his Dionysian storm. She is a sculpture. One outfit, one expression. She barely ever changes volume. Camille Paglia argues, in Sexual Personae, that femininity at its most charismatic is a mask, an artifact, a persona, not a sincere confession. Layla is almost purely persona. The plot even literally renames her Wendy Balsam, and because she is pure surface, she has pure power. The ice blonde lineage, Kim Novak, Tippi Hedren, Grace Kelly, ends in Layla, scaled down and working class, a plastic Madonna of Western New York. Here is what Camille Paglia said on Sharon Stone in Basic Instinct, which I think is the single most relevant thing in her corpus. Stone's Catherine Trammell unmans a team of police inquisitors by merely uncrossing her legs. Should I make a video on that? Well, here, it's the same mechanic, in reverse. Layla disarms Billy by merely refusing to flinch. Same weapon, really. So, why was it Christina Ricci? Why this girl and not any other? Vincent Gallo has never given a real public answer. The best he has offered to a journalist in 1998. "My movie is about an abandoned girl and a boy who was misnurtured by his parents. Christina Ricci was an inspired choice." But if you actually sit with the film, it's obvious. Christina Ricci had, by 17, perfected a very specific trick, a face that refused to react on cue. Critics in that era kept reaching for the same word, mask-like. They called her eyes street urchin. They called her reactions static. Mike D'Angelo, writing later, put it best: "It's Ricci's miraculous performance that makes it work," beginning with the almost preternatural stillness of her extended close-up in the car. A 17-year-old girl being yelled at by a maniac and refusing to show any signs of fear. Gallo needed a co-star who would not give him the satisfaction of his own self-hatred. Ricci, in 1997, was the only actress in America who could truly do it. Why was Layla so attractive? Actually, not because she was passive. Being fully in a room that nobody has made comfortable for you is, it turns out, one of the rarest skills a human being can have. These days, it's more rare than ever. We all want everyone to constantly go out of their way to make us comfortable. Perhaps it's time to learn to not ask for that. Be strong, have an unshakable core. Okay, now, if you are still with me, we are about to get into the look itself. The blue eyeshadow, the tights, the cardigan, the full Layla playbook. Before we do though, tell me in the comments what film character you have ever actually tried to dress as. Not just a Halloween costume, a real-life I Am Becoming Her attempt. I will read them all. I always read them, and I will almost certainly steal your idea for a future episode. Now let's talk about the outfit. A powder blue spaghetti strap slip dress, somewhere on the spectrum between a baby doll, a figure skater costume, and a short nightgown. Over it, a white interlock knit cardigan that almost looks borrowed from a grandmother. Underneath, sheer sky blue tights. Actually, critics at the time kept calling them Cinderella blue. On her feet, silver glitter Mary Jane tap shoes. That is the entire wardrobe. One girl, one look, 110 minutes of film. The costume designer was Alexis Scott. The hair and makeup team left a paper trail, and that paper trail has a very famous name on it, Gucci Westman.
Even I am catching on to the fact that blue eyeshadow is trending. Here we have the just gorgeous Christina Ricci. This was Buffalo 66, and we filmed this movie in Buffalo. Christina's makeup, with her blue sparkle and how she wore it every single day, all the time, was really part of her character. I remember that Vincent Gallo, the director, really wanted her to be kind of quirky, and he liked blue eyeshadow. And it was a mix of, I think I used a Maybelline baby blue eyeshadow mixed with a cream to make it super pigmented and kind of bright. And then I put these silver sparkles just in the middle on her top lid. See it if you haven't. It's a cult classic, darling.
Westman, who now runs Westman Atelier, her own luxury beauty line, which I will say with a straight face is worth every dollar, was at the very start of her career when she did Ricci's face in Buffalo 66. In a 2023 interview with High Snabiety, Westman described the look as innocence and living in a fantasy in a non-romantic world. She also said, and this I love, there is a certain audacity to using that much color, especially in the greyest environment in Buffalo. The eye is everything. Cornflower blue, glittery, applied all over the lid, feathered softly into the socket so the edges blur. And then, this is the actual secret, traced along the lower lash line, no black liner, no contrast, just the blue doing everything. That is why the eyes read so doll-like. They are fully encircled in a single shade, like a child's drawing of eyes. The specific product, according to makeup artist Erin Parsons' viral TikTok, was Maybelline in a shade called Baby Blue, long discontinued. The skin is prepped dewy with a Shu Uemura cream. The lip is a barely there pinky nude gloss. The brows are deliberately understyled. The hair is platinum on top of a natural brunette, shoulder length, center parted, with wispy curtain bangs that look hand-trimmed in a kitchen. Ricci herself, at 45, has been generous about what the original references were. She said, the reference was the Gucci ads at the time, I think it was 96, where all the girls wore blue eyeshadow. It's a makeup look that Elizabeth Taylor did, but you can also see it on Blythe dolls. Tom Ford era Gucci, that was. And the Layla clothes? Here is my actual advice. Find your version. Do not literally dress as Layla. You are not being kidnapped. Take the mood, slightly under-accessorized dollness, and translate it into your own life. Perhaps commit to a single color palette for a week. That would be fun. See what it does to you. At the end of Buffalo 66, Billy walks into a strip club planning a murder-suicide. He imagines all the destruction he will bring, and then he walks out. He doesn't go back to Layla with a ring, or a confession, or a monologue, or a gun. He brings her hot chocolate.
All right, give me a hot chocolate to go, a large one.
Plus a heart-shaped cookie. He buys two, one for her, one for a stranger. That is the emotional resolution. Love, when it finally arrives, sometimes looks like a very small thing you weren't expecting. That is what a girl can do to a poor sociopath. That is what tenderness can do.
I never looked to a God or a spiritual life or a spiritual comfort or any kind of unconditional love ever again in my life until until quite recently. So it means I was out there for a long time, living without that feeling, and it was horrible. You know, a life without a belief in some kind of God for that long is very dangerous and very risky. And it was, well, things are better now.
That is our Ricci Beauty Blueprint. Well, I will be back in a week, perhaps even with some hot chocolate and a heart-shaped cookie for us.
I really like you. I'm gonna be really sad if you don't come back. Can I get a kiss goodbye?
I've queued up the next chapter for you here. I'll see you soon. Love, Kira. Now go create your own blueprint.